Today we'll be going over Composites lab training. Here you'll learn about the usage and safety of the lab. To start, we'll be going over some general information. Where is the Composites lab located? It is in the basement of the ESM, which stands for Engineering, Science and Mechanics building, in G7. It's across the hall from G8. The room is labeled Aero Makerspace and has Composites lab posters nearby. And access to the space will still use the lockbox and the club specific codes. There will be a change to the system in the near future, which then it will go to a buzz card system. What is the lab used for? It can be used to apply composites such as prepared carbon fibers, layups, etc. Those vacuum sealing processes for composites. We can also store composite grade materials, epoxy, prepreg, etc. And then we can also use our foam cutting machine, which cuts different types of foam. Some tools in the lab include our composite grade oven, vacuum pumps, there's the hot wire cutter, there's different types of resin and epoxies, those orbital sanders and sandpaper, those general hand tools, and there's also materials for those resins and epoxies to make composite materials. Some PPE we have in the lab includes the following. We have respirators with specific filters that can handle fumes from resins and different chemicals. We have cleaning spray for the respirators when after use. We have gloves and mitts that are above a certain cutting grade, which will allow you to work with composites and breaking away molds. We have safety glasses. We have full face masks, which also include respirators, and then we also have aprons. So who do you contact? For general composite lab questions, the preferred method is to ask the current composite lab officer. If there is no response from said officer, any AMS mentor on shift is also good. For scheduling times, speak with the project managers within your organization about composite lab times, and then also you can check sums, which will be discussed later. For emergencies and major injuries, please call GTPD. Contact the composite lab officer after calling GTPD to inform them about the situation. The composite lab has rules, so please follow them. Failure to comply with said rules and also the AMS and composite lab safety agreements, this will lead to offenses. So the first offense is a verbal warning to your entire organization or club. The second offense is a temporary 1-week ban from the composites lab, and then future bookings will require approval from the composites lab officer for the rest of the semester. And then your third offense will be a complete semester-long ban from the composites lab and an in-person meeting with the Aero Makerspace to discuss next steps. To keep safety the AMS's top priority, random audits on bookings and lab use will occur. This is just to check up on the space and see if users are using it correctly. This next section will go over how to access the composites lab using the new SUMS system. SUMS stands for Shared User Management System. All lab scheduling will be done using SUMS going forward, so any additional bookings on the Outlook calendar will be rejected. Composites lab general access can be found under the Aero Makerspace equipment list, and all required documentation trainings will be here. These must be completed on SUMS to have access to the lab. Step 1 is to go to sums.galtech.edu and log in. Step 2 is to go to equipment groups and select the Aero Makerspace from the dropdown. After that, click on equipment, then equipment list, and finally Composites Lab General Access. Then complete the requirements under click here to get access to gain general access to the Composites Lab. Once these requirements are completed, you may now begin booking the Composites Lab and putting time on the Composites Lab calendar. For specific tools within the lab, the same process applies as the general access, but you must complete its own associated trainings. For example, the Composites oven has a separate in-person check-in to gain access to the tool. Here we will discuss Composites Lab Booking 101. The time frame for bookings is 24 hours to a week in advance. This means you must book the space 24 hours in advance, but cannot book the space past a week in advance. You can log in 15 minutes early into your booking, and bookings can be scheduled for any time of the day. Once finished, remember to log out and/or delete your time. This can be done at the kiosk. bookings can overlap if similar tools aren't being used. For example, if someone is doing a layup while others are using the hot wire cutting machine, then they can be in the space at the same time. There are no longer recurring meetings available. Organizations must reschedule their bookings every week. Now, leads are the ones who book the meetings. However, non-leads must still log into the kiosk with leads as well. Individual tools can now be booked. Note, the Composites Lab General Access must be booked on top of booking a machine. And I gave an example previously of how that system may work. Rules for leads. Those who book the lab are considered the lead. Leads are responsible for conduct and work within the lab. If misconduct happens, everyone in the lab is still liable, not just the lead. Leads must always be present in the lab. Only exception is for oven watching, where one person must be watching the oven at all times. To make a booking for the lab, you must first access the schedule through Sums. Next, you want to select the time to book the lab. For example, we do 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Next, thoroughly fill out the booking, then hit save. Note, always select Aero Makerspace for the billing group category. Finally, revel in your schedule making skills. For booking other equipment, it's the same process, except you find the equipment under the Aero Makerspace equipment list. If you do not log into your booking after 30 minutes, the booking will be deleted and you will receive a warning via email. So please, arrive early and understand what times you're choosing for these bookings. If there are any issues, please contact the Composites Lab officer. Overbooking or not showing up to multiple bookings will lead to offenses being charged. See previous punishment slide for more details. Leads and non-leads of the same booking must each log into the Sums kiosk. In this section, we will go over general safety of the Composites Lab. Some mechanical controls on safety in the Composites Lab are as such. Ventilation, so we have an air purifier that has activated carbon filters for VOCs, and we have ventilation to the outside. Make sure to turn those on when using any resins or fume-emitting chemicals. Smoke detectors and fire alarm, there's vinyl flooring, so it's resistant to water and scratches. There's e-stops on the machinery. There's a kiosk to check in and check out. And there's also a ton of personal protective equipment or PPE. Some administrative controls are punishments, limited access through the lockbox and bookings, kiosk check-in and check-out logs, lab policies and procedures, and safety posters and signage. When first checking in, you will have to fill out a login form which will ask to rate the cleanliness of the lab, 1 being very dirty and 5 being clean. When you're done, clean up and shut down the lab. Put all tools and materials back where you found them. Clean off all tables and ground around the area of work. Turn off any tools, machines, ventilation. Log out using the Sums touchscreen. Turn off the light, close the door, and place the key back in the lockbox. If the trash is full or the lab is dirty on arrival, please notify an AMS mentor or the Composites Lab officer. If hazardous chemicals are being used, for example resin, all personnel inside the lab must wear proper PPE. Keep all chemicals in their respective locations. Flammable liquids must go in the flammables cabinet. Resins and epoxies must be on their respective shelves. If a chemical spill occurs, call GTPD and alert an AMS mentor and the Composites Lab officer. There are many things within the lab that pose a threat to others, for example, sharp objects, fumes, heat sources, skin irritants. If a minor injury occurs, use the first aid kit above the freezer and notify an AMS mentor and the Composites Lab officer. If a major injury occurs, contact GTPD and provide the following. 1. Location of the emergency. 2. Nature of the emergency. 3. Contact information. 4. Condition of persons involved. And 5. What kind of assistance is needed. There are fire extinguishers located near the door and outside the lab as well. One type of safety concern is fumes. So this can be from many resins, this can be from mold-releasing substances like PVA, and this can also be from cutting and sanding of composites. How to be safe? Always wear a respirator when working near these substances. Use proper filters, organic for fumes, and particulate for dust. N95 masks also protect from dust and some fumes, so be careful of that. Always turn on the ventilation in the room. There's the switch on the wall, and then there's also the big blue activated carbon filter. And anyone not wearing a respirator should not be in the room once resin is mixed. Another risk in the lab is sharp objects. Sharp tools are used to cut fabrics and materials. When breaking molds, there are very thin edges on the composites that can be very sharp. And the edges of fiber sheets and chopped fibers can easily penetrate skin and cause painful splinters. So how do you be safe? Practice proper knife safety, cut away from the body, secure the material being cut, take your time, wear proper gloves, thicker nitrile gloves for chopped fibers, and use caution during the molding process. Attempt to sand or remove those unwanted sharp edges as well. Another risk in the lab is skin irritants. So these can be resins that can cause irritation on the skin. Small pieces of fibers can easily enter the skin and cause irritation. And after cutting or sanding composites, any dust left behind is a major irritant. So how do you be safe? Wear proper gloves during each step of the process. Longer gloves with forearm cover may be necessary. Properly dispose of any fibers or dust left on the floor, and wear an apron to prevent irritants from getting on your clothes. Here we'll go over specifically resin safety. When resin is out, the ventilation must be on. This includes the blue air filter and the ventilation switch, and the door must be closed. All personnel must wear proper PPE when resin is in use. This includes respirators, safety glasses, latex gloves, aprons, etc. Pants are optional, but they're highly encouraged. Cover the tables using the brown paper towel rolls on the ends, and ensure all containers of resin are closed once done using. All resin containers have designated locations. Please put each container back where you found it. Close the resin containers before and after use. If the cap is lost, stuff with the blue shop towels provided in the lab. Wear gloves when handling resin containers. They may be sticky or covered with resin. And if the container is empty, please close it and label it empty. Place on the drying rack or original storage location as well. A common question we get is, what do I do with uncured resin? So first step, pour the remaining resin into a large plastic cup. On one of the designated drying racks, leave the cup. Do not leave it on the edge of the table. Clearly label the cup do not touch and inform when it can be disposed of with a date and time. Typical curing times for resin is about 24 to 72 hours depending on the quantity. Once the time has been reached, throw away the cup. Another question we get is, what do I do with my curing projects? So first you want to put the brown paper sheet over the designated location, then place the project onto the designated drying rack, ensure that it takes up the least amount of space, place a do not touch sign and write down the date and time that the curing process will be completed, and then after that, once it's finished, take the project off the rack and remove the paper. Here we'll go over oven rules and safety. When the oven is on, someone must be watching it. Only composites grade materials are to be put into the oven. This means no flammable or edible materials inside the oven at any time. If another organization is using it, you cannot remove anything. Notify a mentor if the scheduled oven time is inconsistent on sums. Respect the oven and its resources. If something breaks or looks incorrect, notify an AMS mentor. When the oven is on, or has been on recently, do not touch any of the inside or outside metal portions. It may still be hot or warm due to recent use. Ensure the vacuum passage on the left side of the oven is tightly secured to the vacuum hose. Wear proper PPE when handling oven materials, and do not, under any circumstance, start the cure cycle time if the door isn't closed or debris on the inside of the oven isn't fully cleared. Here, we'll talk about the location of items within the lab. Here's a general overview of all the things in the composites lab, ranging from our first aid kit to each different machine to where the tables are located. Here you can get a more in-depth look of where the PPE and materials are located. Here labels all the machines, for example the wire cutter in the oven, and as well as our vacuum pumps, and then also our first aid kit, which is above the freezer. And finally, here are some general other items, such as our tables and our trash can. Finally, we'll go over next steps on how to get access to the lab. So how do you access the lab? After completing this video, take the lab safety quiz. It is 30 questions and you must score 90% or higher to pass. If you do not pass, you can retake the test 24 hours later. It covers the content discussed in this presentation. For the oven, contact the Composites lab officer for an in-person check-in. If you lack the experience for this, shadow leads or members who have experience with the Composites lab oven and have access and have completed the check-in. You cannot book the oven if you haven't completed this training.